Hello everyone, and welcome to the video series where I cover how to apply for the IWE or IYE loan programs through Community Futures Beaver River. And now the first thing I want to do is just go to the CF Community Futures Beaver River website, which is cfsask.ca/beaver-river. So go to that website, and then on the website, this is what it looks like. And you can go over to loans here. At the bottom, you can see you can choose either the Indigenous Women Entrepreneurs, which is IWE microloan program, or the Indigenous Youth Entrepreneurs, IYE loan program. So click on whichever one applies to you. And if you're not sure, click on them both and just read up on them to find out which one is most suitable for you. So we'll start by going to the IWE one, the Indigenous Women Entrepreneurs Microloan Program. So you can go to this page here and just scroll down and read up on it. I would really encourage you to read through all this information. I'm not going to read through it all in this video, but very important to be aware of what's available, to read up on who is eligible and what types of projects are eligible. You don't want to run into a situation where you go through part of or the whole application process and then find out that you're not eligible or your project isn't eligible. So please read through this in detail. And if you find that the other program is more applicable to you, you can go to that one as well. So just back up here to loans and then click on the IYE program. And you'll find that they're very similar here. Again, read through the program offers, program information, eligibility, things like that. So just to familiarize yourself. And then once you've decided to apply, whether it's for this one here, the IYE, or the IWE, again, just make sure you're on the right page. Then you can take the first step, which is click here on Apply Now. When you click on Apply Now, it's going to take you to this short digital form. And so you should fill out this form, just put in your first and last name, your phone number, email address, community of residence. So is that a city? Is that a town? Is that an RM, like a rural municipality? Is that a First Nation? Are you on reserve? So just put the community in which you reside, and then check off each of these ones that apply to you. And then just briefly describe your business idea. So is this a startup? Is this an established company? What are the products or services that you provide? Like what is your business? What industry is it in? What do you offer? And then how much money are you looking to finance? So how much money are you looking to borrow? Just fill that out, click on I'm not a robot, and then click submit. From there, that'll be sent to Community Futures Beaver River. And once they receive it, they'll look at it, and then a business support officer will reach out to you. And from there, if they give you the go ahead, you can move on to the full application. And I'll show you how to get there. You can just go back, or again, go to either one that you're applying for, the IWE or the IYE. I'll just stay on the IYE page for this tutorial. So scroll down near the bottom of the page here. You've already clicked on the Apply Now button. That took you to the short digital form. But after that, the next step is to go to the microloan application form. And now once you get to this form, it's a PDF, it's 6 pages long, and this is the full application form that comes after that initial digital one. Again, make sure you're filling out the right form. Is that IYE or IWE? The forms are basically the same, but there is a distinction just at the top there, and you want to make sure that who's ever receiving it at Community Futures is recognizing that you have applied for the correct one for you. So now in this application form, you can see this is the one for the Indigenous Youth Entrepreneurs Microloan Financing. So you'll just want to read through this carefully and fill out all the information. So first off, just read through those instructions for completing the application. Make sure you've read those thoroughly. And then next, it's asking, have you previously applied for or received financial assistance from AFI? AFI is standing for Aboriginal Financial Institution. So if you've already received financial assistance or funding from one of the Aboriginal financial institutions, make sure you click yes. If the answer is no, click no. So whichever one applies to you, just choose one of them. Now, next up, it's saying, please complete all sections or write NA, not applicable, if it's not applicable to you, and use any attachments as necessary. So to start out with, the first page here is pretty straightforward. So just complete this section with your full legal name. So this section is for the first applicant. There may be multiple applicants going in on one form, but if there's just one, it goes here. So first thing there is surname, which is just your last name, your family name. Given name would be your first name. You just put your street address or PO box. Next would be city and province. So just put the city, comma, province, put in your postal code, date of birth, your gender, SIN, which is social insurance number. So put that number in there, your email address, your phone number, and your cell phone number. You know, a lot of people just have cell phone numbers. That's fine. You don't have to put in both. Just put that in cell phone number. If you have a landline and a cell phone, you can put them both in there. Next is Aboriginal ancestry. So are you First Nations? Are you Métis? Are you Inuit? Fill in that information there. And then next is First Nation / Métis registration number. So if you have First Nation status and you have your Indian status card, or if you're Métis status and you have your Métis citizenship card, put in the registration number here. Now next is current employer. So if you are employed by someone or an organization, just put in the name of the employer and the phone number of the employer. The second page, you can see that this is exactly the same because this is for a co-applicant. So if there's a secondary applicant or a guarantor. So again, fill this out if there is a second applicant that's partnering with you, or if you're having a guarantor. If not, you can leave it empty or just put NA in the sections there. Moving down here, business information. So what is the name of your business? Maybe you haven't chosen yet. Maybe it's a startup and you're still kind of playing with different ideas and trying to figure that out. Maybe you already have a business name and you haven't registered it, but whatever you have, just put the business name in there. And then for address of the business, again, maybe you haven't rented out a commercial space. Maybe you never will have to. If that's the case, then you can just put your home address. If you've rented out a commercial space, you know, office space or retail or warehouse or something like that, you can put the address of that for your business. Next thing is business phone number. So that might just be your personal phone number and that's fine. Just make sure you fill that out, you know, a contact number for the business and business owner. If you do have a fax number, feel free to put that there. If not, NA is fine. And then website. You know, for a lot of startups, maybe they don't have a website yet. That's fine. If your business does have a website, put the domain name in there so that it can be seen. Next thing is business structure. So what is the legal structure of your business? Is it a sole proprietor, also known as a sole proprietorship? Is that a partnership? Or is that an incorporated business or corporation? Or is that other? You know, maybe you've set up as a cooperative. So if you've chosen other, just make sure down here you explain that that is a cooperative or whatever other legal structure you're going with. If you're not sure what legal structure you're going with, well, just by default, if there's just one owner for your business and you haven't incorporated, then you're a sole proprietor. Whereas if there's two or more owners in your business and you haven't incorporated, then you're a partnership. Whereas if you have gone through the process of creating a corporation, then the business is incorporated. And then also with the other ones, like the cooperative, for example, that requires a process. You'll never be by default a cooperative. You have to go through the process of creating that cooperative. So next question there is it actually registered? So have you created the corporation? Have you registered the business name for a sole proprietor or partnership? Click yes if so, click no if you haven't. And if the answer is yes, put in the date of registration. So when did you actually go through the process of incorporating the business? Or when did you register the partnership or sole proprietorship if you did register it? Next thing here is the proposed location. So what is the location of the business? You know, maybe to start here, you put your home address and you're going to eventually rent out some office space or some commercial space. You can note that here. If you are already operating the business or already have some commercial space, you can just mention that it's, you know, same as above or put in the same address. Now, when it comes to the next part here, number of full-time employees. So just put in the number of current full-time employees you have. Maybe you don't have any. If that's just yourself, you can put 1. Number of part-time employees. Again, maybe you don't have any. Maybe that's just yourself. If it's just yourself, you can put 1. Scrolling down here to page 3. So the next section here just says date the business began operations or will commence operations. So when is the business actually starting? When do you plan to actually conduct business and start, you know, making sales and providing products and services and things like that? So just put an estimated date if you haven't started yet. If you have started already, then try and figure out an exact date for when you did start, or at least a rough estimate. Now the next section here is asking for the names of the owners. So A would be the first owner that was filled out at the top of the application. So just put the full name of the owner and then percentage of ownership. So if this is just a sole proprietorship or a corporation with just one owner, then you would put the name of that owner and then 100%. If this is a partnership or a corporation where it's maybe like a 50-50 split, put the first name of the owner here and 50%, and then the name of the second owner in B section and then put 50% ownership. Or, it could be with partnerships or corporations, it could be 20%, 80%, or 90-10, or 60-40. So just make sure you put the names of both owners and the percentage of ownership, or if you just have one owner, put that owner name and 100%. Next section is financial requirements. So what funds do you require, for what purpose, and what are the source of funds? So the first column here talks about funds required for, and then underneath that, it has different items. So it's focusing on capital. So the first thing there being machinery or equipment. So for this project or for this startup, are you purchasing any machinery or equipment? So put the total cost or expected cost of that machinery and or equipment there in the column next to the name. The next row says office equipment and furniture. So are you purchasing any office equipment or furniture for this startup or this project? If so, put the estimated amount. Same thing for inventory. If you have a business that's retailing items and you need to purchase inventory, what is your expected cost for inventory for a 3-month period? You can put that estimated number here. Leasehold improvements. Leasehold improvements, if you're not aware, they're basically renovations to a commercial space. So if you are leasing a place, you're the leaseholder, and if you're making significant improvements, to the infrastructure of the facility of the commercial space, those are leasehold improvements. So if you're expecting to pay maybe $5,000 for some painting and electrical upgrades and things like that, those would be examples of leasehold improvements. So you can put the estimated total in that row beside leasehold improvements. And then other, if there's anything similar to that, if you're purchasing physical assets especially, or making some other type of renovations, you can add that to the other row. Now the next thing is when it comes to operating costs. So are you purchasing insurance? What is the estimated cost for, your business insurance? Utilities, what are you expected to have to pay in utilities for operating costs for starting out? Lease deposits. So if you are leasing a commercial space, maybe you're, renting an office or a warehouse or something like that, how much is the deposit or expected deposit that you're gonna have to pay to get that project started or to get that business started? And then working capital. How much money do you think you're going to need to just have on hand as like a cash reserve for the first 3 months? Maybe you want $2,000 or $20,000 to be able to pay for ongoing expenses like supplies or utilities or things like that. The next thing is marketing. How much money are you going to be needing for marketing for this startup or this project? And then business support services. So are you hiring a lawyer to help you incorporate or help you set up some contracts? Are you hiring a business consultant maybe to write a business plan for you or give you some guidance? Are you maybe working with an accountant to kind of figure out the best financial structure for your business or things like that? So you can combine those costs and put it in the business support services row right here. Now, once you filled out all those sections, you want to add up the total project cost. So this is basically just all the expected costs going into starting this business or taking on this project within an existing business. Now on the next column here to the right, we have sources of funds. So where are these funds coming from? If you've determined that it's going to cost you $5,000 or $20,000 or $50,000 for the startup or project, where is that $50,000 going to come from? So the first row there says applicant's cash equity. So that means what money are you bringing to cover these costs? So maybe if the total startup or project is going to be $50,000 and you have $10,000 of your own money, you would put that in here. So $10,000 there. Other contributed equity. So maybe when it comes to certain furniture or inventory or equipment or something, maybe you've already purchased that. So it's not that you're bringing cash, but you're bringing some of the startup costs with inventory, equipment, or assets that you already have. And so if those are brand new items that you've already purchased, you could just put the purchase price in which you paid for them. If you've had them for several years already, better to put more of a fair market value. It's not what you paid for them. If they're older, it's how much could you sell them for on a fair market value basis as of now. And the next section is loan. So if you're applying for a loan, which you are in this case, if you're expecting to get, $25,000, then you can put that number here, or maybe that's a lower amount or a higher amount. And then other financing as well. Maybe you're getting a grant from somewhere else or some other type of money coming in to help you with this startup or with this project. So now at the bottom here, you want to add up the total project financing. And now these two columns should be equal because you are in the first column over here, you're determining the total startup cost. And then on the far right here, you're determining where that's coming from. So if it's going to cost you $50,000, you have to break down where you're going to get that $50,000. So that $50,000 is going to be coming from likely a combination of a few different things: your cash contribution, maybe your other contributed equity, loans, and potentially grants or other financing options. And then just a note at the bottom of this page: proof of commitments from other sources must be attached. Quote should be obtained and attached. Applicant cash equity should consist of at least 5% of the total project costs. So in that example where I mentioned if the total project costs are $50,000, then you, the applicant, needs to bring 5% of that at least. So that's $2,500 in that case. Or for someone whose project startup cost is $10,000, they would just need to bring $500 to the table to meet that 5% contribution of cash equity. Now scrolling down to page 4. Now this is asking for basically the financial situation of the applicant. So on the left column here, it mentions assets. So what assets do you have as an applicant? So cash or savings, what do you have on hand? Like what do you possess when it comes to cash and savings? So you can just put a dollar figure here. The next thing is investments. So do you have any money in RRSP accounts, TFSA accounts, FHSA accounts, maybe cryptocurrencies, maybe ETFs or stocks or anything like that? Just combine those numbers and put the dollar figure here. The next thing would be a vehicle. Do you own a vehicle? If so, what is the fair market value of that vehicle? You can list it here. Next row is real estate. Do you own any real estate, meaning any property, any buildings? If so, put the fair market value here. Any other assets? Maybe you have, some expensive jewelry or something like that, or some other valuable equipment. You can put that here. You don't have to list off every item, like you don't have to add up the value of your clothing items and stuff like that. Just assets with more significant value. And then underneath that, you can just add up the total. So what is the total value of the assets that you own? And then after that, you can continue to scroll down here to liabilities. So liabilities are basically things that you owe, whereas assets are things that you own. So liabilities being things like you can see here, loans and other debts and credit cards. So do you have any personal loans outstanding? That could be a student loan or some other type of loan like that. What is the amount outstanding? Put that here. Auto loans. So if you are paying off a vehicle loan, how much is outstanding on that loan? How much do you still owe? Put that number here. Credit cards. This is not your credit limit. This is how much you're owing on your credit card. So maybe you have a $10,000 limit and you've used up $1,000, then you're owing $1,000. And so that's the number you want to put in here. And then any other debts you may have, maybe you just have some personal debt to a friend or family member or coworker or something like that. If that's, of a significant value, make sure you put that in as well. And then you can just add up your total liabilities from this section. So basically, what is the total amount of money that you're owing to various institutions, lenders, individuals? And now the next thing you do is you just take the total value of your assets and subtract the total liabilities that you have and put that number here, and that's your personal net worth. So the difference between what you own and what you owe is your net worth. So just put the dollar figure in there. And then next is, what is your proposed security or collateral for the loan? If you have any collateral, any assets, any equipment that you're willing to put up for collateral, you can write that here and then put the value. Not always necessary though, just if you do have something. And if we scroll back up here, this is the next column, statement of personal net worth for the co-applicant or guarantor. So if there is a secondary applicant, if you have a business partner, they fill out the exact same information that you did here, but for themselves. Or if you have a guarantor, the same thing. So just fill that out, all their different assets, all their different liabilities, and their net worth, and if they have any security or collateral that they are going to put up for the loan. Now the next section here is the personal budget. So in this column here on the left, that's for the initial applicant. So what is the total monthly income that you have? That would be mainly from employment would be, one of the most obvious ones, or if you have some investment income, or if you're receiving some other type of maybe government funding or child support or something like that. Add those things up and determine your total monthly income and put the number in here. And then next is total monthly payments. So add up your total monthly payments, the regular ones. What are you paying for rent or for mortgage? What are you paying for utilities? what are you paying for fuel for your vehicle and vehicle insurance and vehicle loan, and maybe you have a gym membership or some subscriptions for software, something like that. So add up your regular monthly expenses and put that number in here. And then next, you'll want to just figure out the monthly surplus or deficit. So in order to calculate that, you just take the number you put in here, your total monthly income, and from that you subtract your total monthly payments, and then you get the difference. And the difference is your surplus or deficit. So you would have a surplus if you are bringing in more money than you're spending each month, or you would have a deficit if you are spending more money than you're bringing in each month. So fill that out here, and then the same thing if you have a co-applicant or a guarantor, they can do the same thing. And then scrolling down here to page 5, just some other information here to fill out. Have you ever declared bankruptcy? So yes or no, depending on your situation. Have you ever had an asset repossessed? So yes or no, depending on your situation. Are you involved in any claims or lawsuits? So click yes if yes, click no if no. And then if you answered yes to any of the above, please explain the circumstances. So just give a little bit of information on when you declared bankruptcy and the current state of that, or if you had an asset repossessed, or if you're currently involved in any claims or lawsuits. Important to add some detail there. And then scrolling down here, just getting to the supporting documents checklist. So it says, please provide the following. So there's a list of things here that are required to be provided when you are submitting this application. So the first thing here, and you can check these off as you have them, copy of Aboriginal ancestry card or confirmation of beneficiary. So again, if you have Métis status and you have a status card, you'll want to include that. If you're First Nations and you have Indian status, you want to include proof of that. The next one is evidence of identity. So copy of driver's license or birth certificate. So you want to include that as well if you have that, and you can just send that in as an extra attachment. The next thing is bank information and evidence of available cash equity. So a bank statement. So if you're bringing in $5,000 or $10,000 of your own cash equity, or maybe it's even less, maybe it's $500 like the example I gave before, you just want to show a recent bank statement to show that you actually have that money available to contribute it as owner cash equity. And then next is evidence of value of any contributed assets. So this is not all of your personal assets. This is if you have any existing assets that you've paid for that you're contributing to the business. So in that example I talked about above, maybe you already have some equipment. Maybe you're starting a photography business and you require a camera or some cameras, but you've already purchased some. You could just show a receipt of the cameras that you've already purchased just to show the value of those contributed assets that you're contributing to the business startup or the project. The next thing here is copies of any quotes for project costs over $1,000. So if you are doing some leasehold improvements like some renovations, or purchasing some extra equipment, or you're getting a website built for the business, you should get a quote and provide that quote with the application, particularly if the specific cost is going to be over $1,000. The next thing is copies of any business licenses and business insurance coverage. So if you have a municipal business license in your town, in your city, include a copy of that. And if you already have business insurance coverage, just provide a certificate of insurance. The next thing is a copy of your resume and application business training certificates in your field. So just make sure you have an up-to-date resume included. And then if you have any specific training certificates in your field, if you work in trades and you have some type of trade certificate, or you've taken some training for aesthetics or hair or something like that, anything that's relevant to the business you're operating and the service you're providing or the products that you're selling, make sure you include those as well. And the next thing is for existing businesses, provide most recent financial statements. So if you're a startup and you haven't conducted business yet, you haven't had any sales yet, then you're not going to have financial statements. You'll have financial projections and that'll come later. But if you've already been operating for a while and you're applying for this to expand for more of a project, then include financial statements from your business from past years. The next thing is copy of partnership agreement or incorporation documents. So if you're a sole proprietor and your business is a sole proprietorship, you don't have to worry about this. But if you're set up as a partnership, you want to include a partnership agreement if you have one. Or if you set up your business as an incorporated business or corporation, you want to include documents for that. And those documents would be your articles of incorporation. So maybe you want to include your certificate of incorporation. Maybe you want to include a breakdown of the different shares that you have and the different shareholders, and a list of directors and officers and location and things like that. And if you have any business bylaws, you might want to include those as well. And then the next thing here is copies of any marketing data and any contracts, letters of intent you have to support sales assumptions. So in your financial projections, which I'll cover in another video, if you are doing some research and you have some data available, or if you have any contracts where, certain organizations or individuals have agreed to hire you, or letters of intent to hire you that support your sales assumptions, you'll want to include those here. Meaning if you already have some contracts lined up or some data based on comparable businesses or some letters of intent from interested clients, then include those here, because it shows that you're actually more likely to get business, or maybe you have something secured already, or at least maybe you've done some market research to justify your numbers. And then lastly, the last one here is completed Indigenous Youth Entrepreneurs Business Planning Guide and Cash Flow Template. And again, right now I'm covering the IYE application, but if you are doing the IWE one, this application is going to be very similar. Just make sure you fill out the right one. And when it comes to the Business Planning Guide and Cash Flow Template, that is available on the CF website, which I'll cover in another video here. So just a note there that failure to provide these documents with your application may cause delays in assessing your project. So make sure you've filled out this application thoroughly. You've gone through the supporting documents checklist and provided everything that's applicable to you. And then you can just scroll down here to the 6th and final page. And that's just your declaration of consent of applicants and or guarantor. So just make sure you read through this thoroughly, and then you can sign it with the signature of the applicant and the date in which you signed and the location in which you signed it and the year. And then if you do have a co-applicant or guarantor, they can sign as well. And then just make sure you have a witness sign, and then you can save the form or print the form if you want to. Just make sure you don't reset it if you've gone through all the work of filling it out. So that's just a quick tutorial on how to fill out this application.